like I said, my name's Peter. I live in the Midwest. I live in Iowa. Two-sword has really kind of been my hobby. My two-sword is like there's lots of different schools of thought as far as like how to put together like a theory on how to fight. Most of my theory is based on a system that you can easily adapt and move pieces around to combat just about anything that somebody else is doing. So it's not particularly strong against certain types of people or particularly weak against certain types of people. It's just kind of like a good baseline built on fundamentals. I'll go through a lot. So we're going to start very, very basic, and then as we move through the class and how questions go and stuff, we'll get to more advanced topics. But in order to understand the advanced topics, you kind of need to see the baseline, like the foundation blocks of where all this is built from. Okay? The first piece of the puzzle that's really quite important is the simple concept of hand matching. Hand matching was introduced a long time ago, and I've heard lots of people explain it in different ways and the pros and cons of it. Most of those people don't really know what they're talking about because they'll say things like it simplifies the fight, it simplifies, the shot selection that people have. Well, none of that's actually very true. The big difference, the way to really understand is look at the difference between the two, when you're cross-handed or when you're hand matched. Okay? So if we're hand matched, and my hand is here, what's the closest thing for him to hit?
Your arm.
Which side of my arm?
Outside.
Outside arm, yeah? Alright, so if my hand is here, what's the closest? Inside, okay? So depending on where my hand is, that's going to basically change what's the closest thing for him to hit, right? And same with me. If he's got his hand up, that's my closest thing to hit. And here, keep it back. So if this is my closest thing to hit, I'm almost there on that, right? Just maybe a tiny bit closer, and now I can strike outside arm. All right, so the difference between inside arm and outside arm is relatively this, it's very, very close, right? It's within an inch, right? Now, in order for me to hit his body, there's 1 inch, 2 inch, right? Now I can hit his body, okay? Make sense? Right? Now, if we go cross-handed, go back. What's the closest thing for me to hit on him? Inside arm, right? That's the closest thing, yeah? Simple enough? Now I can't quite get outside arm. 1 inch closer, now I can get outside arm. Right? Can't quite hit body. 1 inch closer, now I can hit body. Okay? So the biggest difference is what? Alright, there's a little bit more cushion between fighting their hand and their body. Right? Does that make sense? Okay, so what that does for you is, like anytime you're fighting, as a general rule, you want to live by the philosophy of you want to fight their forward hand. Okay? Now, fighting their forward hand basically allows you to not have to cover your body so much with your weapon, and you can let your feet protect your body. Right? So that's what hand matching really does for you. It does profile you, so it makes it a little bit harder to stab, but it's still pretty easy to gun somebody. Okay? We'll build on this in the future, but that's the basis of a lot of what this system is kind of built upon. Okay, maintaining that distance where we can fight each other's inside and outside hand and not hit each other's body. That's a really easy concept. You're like, that makes sense. Like we should be able to do that, right? But the actual practice of maintaining the distance, like if he steps on me, right? I'm like, whoa, now we can hit each other's bodies. Right? It changes that quickly. Okay, so especially for somebody who's shorter or somebody who has, like a bad knee or something, they can't step as far, maintaining that distance is all the more important. Like from here, I can hit her body from here, right? You can't quite hit me here. Like so that, hold your sword straight out. So that distance is what? 5 inches or so, right? And that's caused by the difference in our height. All right. So if we hold your arm all the way out, so if I can get to her outside arm, she can get to my inside arm at the same time. That distance is not very large at all. Right? So if you were shorter or you have slower feet or something, that keeping that distance so that you can fight just their hand helps mitigate height differences or heights disparaging. That becomes even more important for somebody who's shorter. is you maintain that distance. You fight them a little bit further away. Don't let anyone get anywhere near your body. Okay? Because then, you know, you have the same options that they have. Right? You can either go inside arm or outside arm. Does that make sense? Right? Okay. So what I'd like to do, just to kind of wake up a little bit, get your single sword, and let's do a little bit of single sword fighting. Go hand match, and just try to stay that distance, enough distance away from each other, and not let each other hit each other in the body. If you hit somebody in the body, you're like, yeah. But what you want to do is you want to fight that hand. You got long hair, you got to do it.
No, okay, so maybe I might not think of the same thing.
Now move your feet, move your feet, move your feet. Alright, so what did you guys notice? Anyone have any observations in that?
It was easy to get to the body when I flipped to the offside hand, like the offhand.
Yeah.
It was easy to flip to the body through there instead of trying to get to the body on
If you're
this side.
cross-handed, you mean?
Yeah, like
Yeah.
crossing over. Like if we were hand matching, it was easier to get to the offside to hit their body than trying to come out to the outside.
For sure. Cold outside. Anyone else?
Really digging into the just fighting the hand, really dug in that I needed to move my feet to make sure that there's no chance of body getting touched in that like fighting at max like 2-inch range.
Right. It's very active.
Yeah.
It's very you have to have very active feet. You cannot stand and deliver. If you stand and deliver, then somebody else is just going to hit you in the body. Right. Now I created a really simple drill that will really help with this, because one of the hardest things to do trying to maintain that is identifying the difference between how far you think somebody is moving towards you or away from you and how much they're actually moving. Okay? Unless you spend a little time focusing on that specific thing, it's hard to recognize it. Right? So, alright, so in this drill you start off with your arm out. You're going to start and just identify like where your swords are kind of ending on each other, right? Okay, so you're going to identify where the sword's ending, right? Like on each other. Okay, so then we'll take turns. And he'll take a step forward towards me, you can swing or not. And I will take a step and retreat. Okay, let's go back and do that. So as he steps, right? Right, then we hold our swords up. That's for about the same, yeah? And then I step. Right, so I've gained on him. Okay, and you're like, okay, I see that. And you're like, all right, next time I need to move a little bit further. Right, and you're like, oh, well, you went further than I thought he would. Right, do it again. Then you go. All right, so here he gained on me. Right, and so you use that as kind of a tool, and you basically just gather information about yourself or whomever you're fighting. Right? Simple. And also look, it's not always like a full lunge, right? Like sometimes you want to take small steps. And then you identify, oh geez, like I practically ran to the hills when he hardly moved, right? So you want to be able to identify that as well. And middle ground steps, like it's all the different types of steps. But identifying how they move and how far they're traveling is what this is about. And when you do this, make sure you do 2 rounds of it where you switch hands, right? Yeah. And then you've got a different foot forward, because stepping with your different feet is a different skill.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. No, it's good. Man, I don't back up really well at all.
I want to let everyone know do this whenever you're comfortable, not trying to go too deep, wherever you're at.
Now I want to show you guys a little something. I want to digress a little bit. Okay, so when you move, right? When you're stepping, just like Anatol said yesterday in the class, when you're stepping backwards, your back foot leads the way, and your forward foot follows. When you step forward, your forward foot leads the way, and your back foot follows. Yeah? Simple enough? Now when you move, when we take a step, right, our feet are not what's moving, our core is what we're trying to move. Right? Like you can do this, your core doesn't go anywhere, yeah? And when we're moving through space in combat, we want to move this, because it's attached to this, which is attached to this. Yeah? So, if you think about it, your legs are only so long. Everyone's legs are, as long as they are. Yeah? You can all agree to that? Nobody's legs like stretch at night or anything?
Not anymore.
Not anymore. Yeah. No one's a bat. Okay. So when we step, we want to move our core. So if you start a fight with your feet, far apart, and you step, I'm moving my core this much. Yeah. When my feet are together, and I step the same distance, same end distance, the same wingspan of my feet, I move my core this much. When your feet are further apart, you're more stable. You can shift your weight easier from side to side, right? Yeah. Especially if you're fighting like a full contact game where somebody's bashing you, you can hold yourself firm, with your feet further apart. But as a side effect, you can't move as far. So if you were finding yourself like having trouble closing on somebody, or somebody is able to just like hit you in the butt from 10 yards away, you're like, man, that guy just has such a step. Well, take a good look at your feet. You might be fighting them like this, and then it's really hard for you to step off, right? So then maybe that person, you're going to fight them with your feet more close together. Or as the fight progresses, you're like, all right, well, I think he's going to lunge, and you bring your feet together so you're ready to retreat. Or I'm ready to assault this guy, so then I'm going to bring my back foot up, so then I'm ready to pounce. Right? So let's do that drill again. Use the other hand and and change how your feet are at the beginning of the fight. Okay? Now, as a side effect, when it's the other person's turn to step, take a real good look at their feet, and it'll help you judge how far they can go.
I have very minimal knowledge on that.
So what did you guys notice about that? How does that change it? How does that help?
Definitely paying attention to my own feet along with his was able a little bit easier to gauge. Okay, well he's a little bit further. He's not going to go very far this time around.
Great.
I like the kind of trying to hide my step. Like, is there a way I can look in a way that I don't look like I'm going to lunge this time?
Yes. Yeah. You can, because you're conscious of what you're doing. It's really easy to disguise what you do. Right. What else?
Well, I discovered that even just a little bit of movement of my foot caused a jump, which makes me think that I can do all sorts of fakes just by moving my feet, which is interesting.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Not only can you do that to scare people off, but you can do that to draw people in. Right? Meaning, like if I'm fighting somebody, like have you ever fought Belko?
Yeah.
He's like impossible to pin down, right? He steps away like a jackrabbit.
So much.
Yes. So things that I'll do for him to try to get him to come within my range is, I'll be here like waiting for him, and I'll step back. I won't move my back foot at all, but I step back and I've gathered myself, and then he comes a tiny bit forward, and then I'm on, right? Like, so there's lots of things that you can do like that with perceptions, but because you're actively working on it and conscious of it, you can do it like throughout the fight. I tell people all this kind of stuff, and then sometimes people are like, well, Peter, that's really hard to do in a fight. It's true. It's hard to do that. It's hard to watch somebody's feet when you're trying to watch their hips and you're trying to watch their hands. But if you do this drill, like say at the beginning of your fighter practice, you're trying to warm your legs up, you do this drill 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 times, just every time, like it starts to become second nature, and you see it without even trying to see it, right? And then you don't have to consciously think about it. It's just part of what you do, right? And then as you get better at it and you expand, and you see somebody go like this, you're like, all right, well, here comes the spin. Here it comes. I'm ready for you, right? You know what I'm saying? Okay. So this is a tool that you can use, but it's extraordinarily helpful with what we do in this. We've talked about our feet a little bit. And again, I want to stress, as we go through this, I'll keep going back to it, but you want to maintain that distance so your body is not as threatened. And you got to worry about your hands instead of your body. Okay? We're basically going to worry about your forward hand, your inside forward hand, and your outside forward hand. Those are the two big scary areas. Yeah? Okay. Now, let's identify some danger zones, right? So if somebody grab a board, the best way to identify danger zones is if I don't have an extra weapon in my other hand. Okay? So this is a 2-sword class, yeah, but we're going to cover this so that we can get to that. Right? So if I'm fighting against him with my single sword, it's going to become very, very obvious if I swing at him where he's going to hit me. Pair up again, and one of you go with a board, and the other one of you go with a single sword. Now, the single sword fighter should expect to lose these fights. There's no reason that you should expect to win a fight against a boardman when you've got a single sword. I mean, yeah, you can outclass somebody, you can trick people, but for the most part, a boardman should beat a single sword fighter. Yeah? But let's study it. You boardmen, let the single sword fighter open on you, and then you punish them. All right, switch. Switch who's got the board. Switch who's got the board.
Sure. Unfortunately, there's no like hole.
And match. Miss. Hi, Bart. Oh, okay. Now, there's a couple things. You guys had some excellent points, and we'll cover those points. But when you make something more dangerous, the return they're going to give you is more consistent. So if you do something crazy, like reach board side, right? Like, who said that? Reach board side? Yeah. If I reach board side, right? This is so much more juicy. For me to go here, it's just going to be much more consistent for him to come to this point, right? Right? That's another premise we're going to build upon. So, even from a standstill, before I swing, if I have a single sword, what's my biggest threat, right? Where's the first immediate threat? My outside arm, no? Yeah? Okay, so immediately then, what I want to do is I want to give him as few options as possible from an opener standpoint. So I'm going to put my hand in the way of that most dangerous shot. So I've moved my hand out. So what's now the biggest danger, the biggest threat? Inside arm. Inside arm, yeah? Right. So now that I've got this doohickey in my other hand, this guy's going to cover inside arm. All right, so I've cut off the two most immediate threats. Right? Now whether that looks like this, whether it looks like this, that's going to change then what his tertiary shot is going to be. If I'm covering inside lane and my hand is over it, right? I'm covering inside lane, I'm covering outside lane, my hand is up high, where's that going to lead him now? Yeah, down low, yeah? Or in here. Either side down low. He's going to reach for body. Right? If my hand is here, and I'm covering inside lane, right, he's going to reach high outside, right? Make sense? Yeah. Cool, right? Okay, now, if we circle back a little bit, it's more advantageous if we maintain that safe distance with our hand matching, what we just talked about with those other feet drills, for me to be covering high. Because in order for him to reach my body, he's got to take a hard step. He's got to take a hard step. He's got to beat my feet. Right? Right? Okay. So let's digress a little bit and go back to what we just did. Now, if I threw like his inside hand, if I went for his inside hand, where's his return? Right? Down arm. Right? Straight chop. Right? If I throw out, chop. If I throw here, chop. Right? There's a lot of chops. There's a lot of direct assault on my arm. Okay? Now, once you identify where those dangers are coming to with the given shot, that's when you know where to put this in. Right? And the other thing to think about too, depending on how I throw my shot, where my hand is in relation to the tip of my sword when I throw a shot, is going to help determine where his weapon is going. If I'm super neutral and I throw it like this, I'm not really covering high, I'm not really covering low with my hand, I'm not really sure where he's going to go. If I throw the shot like this, my hand is lower, he's definitely going to come higher. If I throw the shot like this, he's definitely going to come lower. right? So, using that, you want to throw shots that very clearly delineate where you want them to go. So if we look at this on the inside, if I'm going inside hand, right? If I'm throwing this shot, and I throw this, and I put this sword here,
Try and go over.
he's gonna try to go over.
Then
Yeah, right. Yeah, I've basically given him
nothing.
Although, if I throw this, my hand's quite shallow, right? It's gonna look fairly juicy for him to do something not intelligent, like swing to my hand. He may not, if he doesn't even see my hand. A lot of times people don't see my hand down here, and they'll throw under, and it's like it's just such a simple thing. Like versely, if I throw it here, right, and I know it's coming down arm. If I throw that here and I have my hand here, like they're bringing that shot down on my weapon, you know, and it's such a clear, easy thing. Okay. Now, if I throw outside, right? If I throw outside, the shot's gonna be coming down arm. Yeah. So I have my weapon in the way. Right. So now I've got this covered. That's, you know, a very easy assault from there. Right. If I throw it open and I throw it here, my hand's in the way of that straight down shot. Right. So he's most likely going to do what? He's most likely going to cross, which is great because I can move my hand over a little more, or he'll wrap around, right? So then my hand comes here, right? So what this gains us, oh, and we can look at shield side too. So if I throw shield side, even if I throw shield side here, it's coming down arm, so I'm going to have my hand here, right? If I want to throw with my backhand, or even under, if I'm trying to go under shield, you know, again, my hand is going to be in the way, right? If I want to go use my backhand, and I've heard in the past, and I've even said it a few times in the past, that you never want to open with your backhand.
Yeah.
Right? Now, there is nothing, I cannot stress enough that there is no rule, you can't do this, or you can only do this, right? You can do whatever you want, but you got to understand the consequences of that action. So like I said before, the more danger you put yourself in, the more consistent the return's going to be. If I throw this, right, there are certain dangers that happen. Okay. If you put your board down. If we can reach each other's body with our forward hand, if I can reach his body with my forward hand, he can generally reach my body with his forward hand. Right? I can't quite reach his body with my backhand yet. If I can reach his body with my backhand, I have to be even a little bit closer. Right? So it becomes even a little bit more dangerous because they can stab me, and we don't want to be stabbed. Right? So if you're opening with your backhand, especially to their body, you need to be fully conscious of the fact that you could get stabbed, and you will get stabbed, and you'll be like, oh my gosh, that would suck. Right? So the first thing, if you're going to open to body, the first thing you need to do is you need to cut off that stab. So this forward hand is going to be what's going to stop you from getting stabbed. So, like I said, if I throw here and my hand is here, and I'm not letting him stab me, you can get that out of there, right? Let's talk about the arm first. So if I throw here, it's most likely going to return my body down my arm, right? So I'm going to bring my tip up, right? So I'm cut off this lane, right? Now, his stab could very easily come down. Instead of coming to my arm, we can move to the body, and his stab could very easily be coming, or he could be chopping here, right? So either case, now I've given him more options to come at me. So I need to actively be blocking, like paying attention where that block needs to go, right? You see how that becomes more difficult? But if you understand that difficulty, then, and you can combat it, you can plan for it, then it's fine. What I want to do from this point is I'd like you guys to get with different pairs, get 2 swords, one of you get a board, and I want you to open, right? And all you're going to do is open, and the boardman's going to return once. And I want you to be covering where that return is going to be. You boardmen, I want you to return quickly. Don't give them a second to throw and be like, oh, I need to cover here. No, just hit them, right? Force them to get that weapon in the way as quickly as they can. Oh, that net blocks out. All right, what did you guys see with that? What'd you
I
notice?
wasn't consciously thinking about making a block before when I make my strike to where, like, for example, with this last one, like I'm a very attacker. Like,
Yeah.
So I'll make a fake and then make an attack. So in the last one, I took the shot, but instantly went for the guard because I knew where the opening was going to be after the shot, and it was so smooth.
It's safe.
Yeah.
Right. What else?
Figuring out, kind of finding out the numbers and what like the higher percentage shots on every attack, and because it's like 1 or 2 options, and one's like 60%, one's like 40%. Just kind of like playing the odds and where it's going to be at.
Yeah.
Instead of having like 5 options, you've got 2 now.
Yes.
So it's really figuring that out. And realization.
It's cool, right?
I often found myself walking over the top of my attacking arm. What were the instances where I would go from underneath again?
It depends on where your hand is. So if your hand, when you throw your shot, if your hand is high, like if your hand is higher, you know, like they're going to be coming lower because your hand is up here versus down here. Right?
So throwing lower gets them to throw higher.
Right? What else?
Dictating which hand was better to block with. So if it was really outside, I really didn't have to use this hand to block it. Just block it out a little bit further with my left hand. Instead of putting, though it was there to guard just in case I missed, catching it with this hand on the outside was a little bit easier than trying to put this sword out and then returning.
Yeah. That's excellent. Anyone else? Would you guys notice how far apart your hands were?
Yeah.
They're very close together, right? It's very rare that your hands get like out far apart, right? So my hands generally stay like within 10 inches of each other the whole fight, right? So if you find yourself like losing both arms in a fight or getting stabbed or hit in the body, you know, take a good look at your hands and be like, oh geez, I'm like way out here. Yeah. People, as a fight progresses, and your kind of like, you know, instinct brain takes over, people's hands generally get further and further and further apart because you're trying to get over, trying to get around stuff, right? And your hands keep getting further and further out, right? Exactly. Right. So bring your hands in. Now, what you mentioned, anytime, and you guys should practice this. If we had a lot more time, I'd go into this like super deep. But grab your shield. Anytime you can get them, you can throw with your forward hand or your back, whatever hand you throw with. If you can protect itself with itself, right? That's fantastic, right? So easy ways for that to happen. There's basically 2 shots that I throw. That's almost a super consistent. Like this hand is going to keep itself safe. I don't even really need this hand in the fight. And there's an opening to the inside hand and an opening to the outside hand. Okay? So the inside hand is just this here, right? My hand is already in the way. He's got to circumvent my hand to go somewhere else to get to me. Right?
You know what? If you want a Jack Sparrow,
Right? See it? Pretty simple. Right? Now, depending on where his hand is, where his shield is, like I would throw this on him all day. I would be like, and I would come at that all day long, right? Right there, all day. Right? And it's extraordinarily safe because my hand's in the way. Right? Now, if he was favoring it differently, he like had his hand like in behind the shield, because after I hit him a couple times, his hand's gonna go behind that shield. Like he's not gonna keep leaving it out. He's like,
Or lower it.
yeah, or he'll lower it, right? So now,
That happened,
like,
that happened to me at the pitch.
you know, the outside becomes a lot more juicy, right? Like comes, you know, I'm like, all right, well that's a good place to hit him. Now, rather than throwing it like a traditional wrap, like a traditional flat wrapper, I'm here. I'm not gonna throw that, right? I'm not gonna throw it like that. I'm gonna throw it open. Right? I'm going to throw it open here. Right now, that's the shot that comes in, yeah? Now my hand is in the way. Right? My hand's already in the way. I'm protecting myself already. Now what I've achieved, anytime I have a hand on his weapon, where my guard is already in the way, and he throws to it, right? Now I've got a free action with my other hand. I'm 100% safe.
The action economy.
Yeah, he can't hit me because I'm in the way. So I can do whatever I want with this hand. Whether I come under, whether I come over, whether I chop to arm. A lot of this is just going to depend on where he moves his shield. Because when this happens, you better believe that boardman's in his brain, his oh shit is going to be bell is going to be ringing real loud. Because you're like, this is coming, right? Right? So, yes, you're going to watch where that shield goes. Most boardmen, their shield's going to protect their arm because you've been punishing their arm. You've been staying away. And generally, like especially in the past, I would fight people's arm and their shield would slowly get further and further and further over like a typewriter, and then I'd hit the enter button. And that shield would come flying back, and that's where he would fight with it for the next 6 fights. And it'd be like, right? And that's how the fights would progress. Okay? It's so true, right?
God damn it, Pete.
You've all seen it. You all know.
Yep.
All right.
That's happened to me, Sword on board.
Yeah, absolutely. But again, all right, so we've got these 2 really simple, safe openers you can throw with your forward hand. We've just discovered where it can keep itself safe. Now you pair that with your other hand in there, it's really safe then. You can almost put it to the point where they're like, well, I'm not even going to throw back because your stuff's all here. I, as a general rule, will always fight hand matched to their forward hand. Some people just don't want to do it, and that's fine. You do what you want. Do what works for you. There's no skin off my back. I'll do what I want to do. You do what you want to do. If you want to fight right foot forward against a right-handed boardman, you're just going to get stabbed more, in my opinion. But, right, because anytime my backhand can be in this fight, he's going to stab you.
Yeah, he is. He's great.
Right? And just like we talked about, that cushion between you and your body and your forward hand is just so much smaller. But you can do it if you want.
Well, no, it's not about doing it. It's when you're armed and you can't.
Yeah. So you want to look at openers for what you have with this forward hand, right? You basically have, you can try to reach to back body. Now, rather than reaching to back body like traditionally, or like a flat wrap, right? I'll reach to back body, and with this corner on this shield, I would throw this basically just to solicit a response, or just right and have my hand in the way, right? Once his hand comes in the way, and I'll do this to people all day, and they'll throw, and this corner is really disruptive. But if he brings it that far over, I'll cross on him. But if he brings it more shallow, right, I'll throw down arm. Right? Or you can do the same thing just to their hand.
Just across, or you trying to get on the inside.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Or you can throw a flat cross to his hand. All right. Now you're in the way.
High cross fight.
What's a flat cross? It's not a high cross.
Bossy. And high.
There's nothing wrong with a good high cross, right? As long as you do it smartly. We're looking at now these free actions, okay? So you gain free actions on people. A lot of times in my opening shot in a fight, I'm threatening but not really trying to hit them. I'm trying to solicit a common response. Okay? Now you're like, well, in two-sword, it's so scary when they swing at me, and I don't want them to swing at me ever. I just want to hit them. Okay? Well, we've just spent, 25 minutes talking about how not to get hit once you swing, right? So you have a toolbox now to protect yourself when you swing. So let's set them up for stuff that they don't want. Let's give ourselves free action. So we've looked at those 2 easy openers here, right? You're like, oh yeah, and like now he's toast, right? I've got a free action there. I've got a free action here with this hand, right? Now, there's other ways you can do it. Again, the more danger you put yourself in, the more consistent their return's going to be. Instead of throwing this, right, throwing it like this, now my hand's in the way, there's a good chance he might come under just because my hand's in the way. So if you find you're in that situation, make it more juicy for him to come down arm, right? Now I've achieved free action with this hand because my hand's on this sword and in the way, right? If they still don't want to come down arm, throw to his hip. Like now he's really going to come. He's really going to want it, right? Again, I've achieved free action, right? Or, right? you know, I'll give myself a nice free action. I can do whatever, right? But you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So you throw something, you gain a response, and once their weapon is out there hanging up, waiting for you to keep your stuff between it and them, you've got free action with one of your hands, or should do, right? When you throw a shot and you don't have a free action when they return, they're either very, very good, or you need to take a real hard, good look at what you just threw.
Look, I'm sorry. Forgive me. That was so.
Okay? Meaning you did something like this. Right? Or you did something like this. Right? Or you did something like this. Right? So hit him, but you know, but you see what I'm saying. When I'm throwing both my weapons, I'm not protecting that forward hand. That's when you're gonna get hit. That's when you're gonna get stabbed. That's when you're kind of gonna lose those free actions. Any given time in a fight, my goal in a fight is not to win. It's to survive longer than that guy.
And there you go.
Right?
I didn't even think about it. You're right hand.
I'm not trying to win a fight. I'm trying to stay alive.
You gotta run back to the line.
And we'll beat them in the war of attrition. I'll make them reach to try to hit me rather than try to reach to hit them. It doesn't matter to me how long that fight takes. In a fight, at the beginning of a fight, there's one of two things that will happen. Right? Either you open on them or they open on you. Now we just talked about opening on somebody else. So let's talk about getting them to open on you. Right? Okay, you board again? Now, this is going to really, where you put your hands is going to help determine where they're going to open, right? So like we talked about before. So if my guard is already cutting off the outside, which is the immediate threat, the next threat is the one I want to cover, right? So in this case, the outside is my immediate threat. The inside is the next threat. So I'm going to cover the inside. Yeah? And all this does, it does two things. One, it forces them to come outside of either one of my hands and lets me control the inside lane if they open. Inside lane is between my hands. Outside lane is anything outside my hands. Okay? So outside, it's much harder for them to hit my body, because they've got to travel around. There's a direct line between my body and their arm coming to the inside lane. Yep. Okay, so if depending on where my hands go, again, that's going to help determine where they're gonna throw. Once they throw, I should achieve free action as long as I block it and stay within range to hit them.
Yeah.
Right? If they throw and he throws, and I'm like, ooh, yeah, it's like maybe I can reach that wrist, but I've broken distance too much really to be a true threat. Does that make sense? So when they're opening on you, you're gonna figure out this cushion of how far to stay away to keep my body safe while still being threatening to both sides of their forward arm. Okay? Now we can't talk about how them opening without talking about getting stabbed. Right? Now, a stab can come from one of two directions. It can either come from the outside coming in, yep, like that, or it can come from the inside or straight forward coming in, right? Now, generally you want to try to block the stab with your forward hand, but you can block it with your back hand as well. If you have two weapons, you might as well use it. When blocking the stab coming from the outside with your forward hand, right? If you try to block it from the outside, he can just continue to bring his hand further out. The further out my hand gets to block it, and you're still going to have a good line to stab me, right? So, because of that, then when his stab comes in from the outside, I want to catch that tip, and push it off my center line out and across. So no matter where his hand goes, there's no way he's going to get that stab to. Now, if his hand comes inside, right? It's the opposite. So if his hand turns in and that's coming, the further I bring my hand this way, like stop it, he can just keep bringing his hand further this way and he can get to that stab. Does that make sense? So when that stab comes, you're gonna I can call it number 6 parry in fencing. You're basically just gonna turn it out.
Yeah. A-frame,
right?
whatever.
You're gonna push it off your center line. So no matter how far this hand keeps coming in, he's not gonna get to you.
Is that what you're doing?
Right? Alright, so the backhand, it's flip-flop. If it's coming from the outside, and I try to block his heel, he's just going to keep bringing his hand in. Yeah? So I bring it here. Right? His hand goes down and under.
I want to see how easy I can do this.
Right? Then I'm just going to block it out like yeah. Pair up again, and you boardmen just stab in real slow and let them block it the way they're meant to block it. Now do it with both hands, give them 4 or 5 reps, and then switch.
Okay. Yeah. I'm like the risk reward on that. Like if we're going slow, I'll do it. But if we're going full speed, not a chance.
I'm coming in this way, right? And try to get out.
That's right. In theory, it's very simple. In practice, it should be simple, but it's not. It's just not. It's for whatever reason, you're like, what was I supposed to do? So, but you get better at it, and you get to the point where you can do it in combat, where it's super fast. Everything's happening super fast by practicing it slow. You start very slow, then you get a little bit faster, a little bit faster, a little bit faster, and then it's game time, right? So, you can again, it's another thing that you can just kind of do like with a friend, or at the end of a practice when you're both exhausted, you just if you're fighting a good boardman, it's a very good practice to retreat to their board side, because now they've got to swing around their shield to get to me. And it helps dictate where the shot's coming from. It's much harder for him to cross when he's got to circumvent his shield. And his hand generally comes out further from his shield than before. If he brings his shield out to cover his hand a little bit, it makes it even easier for him to stab him. Right? Or try to strike the arm, or whatever. Right? All right, so 2 sword on 2 sword, okay? There's a lot of similarities fighting a boardman, but it becomes more complex because they have 2 things to hit me. Right? That's one difference. There's always an open lane to their body, right? When they've always had an open lane on your body. When they don't have a shield, they don't have the big blocky thing anymore. They've got a hitty thing instead. So, as a consequence, first thing I'll do coming into a 2 sword on 2 sword fight is I'll look at what foot they have forward. Okay? Now the foot they have forward is the foot that I will hand match. I'll bring that foot forward and match it. Alright, now what this does, hold up your swords. If I can reach his inside wrist, he can reach my outside wrist. Right? If I can reach his outside wrist, he can reach my inside wrist. Now, he's close to reaching my wrist with his backhand, and I'm close to reaching his wrist with my backhand, right? If I get a little bit closer, now he can hit my inside and outside with this forward hand, of course. Now he can also hit me with his backhand, my inside at least. Right? Outside, maybe he will be able to hit me. Yeah, he's gonna get it. But he's got to reach, right? Right, but he cannot get to my body. Not yet. Now, if I can get to his body with my forward hand, right, he can get to my body with his forward hand. Right? His backhand's still not in play. If his backhand can get to my backhand can get to my backhand can get to his backhand. Right? See how this is breaking down? Now, if both of my hands can hit his body, both of his hands can hit my body. Right? You see that progression? So, what you can do then is you can fight him to the point where you want to make this backhand as far from the fight as possible. So you maintain that cushion where I can fight his hand, with either one hand or both hands, and the whole time I'm keeping my body safe. Right? If I change and I'm here, and my forward hand can reach his, or my backhand can reach his forward hand, we have the same range distance here. Right? Now the big difference then comes if either one of my hands, if my forward hand can reach his body, both of his hands can reach my body. Whereas before, if my forward hand could reach his body, his backhand could not. That's the big difference. So, knowing that, right, that becomes the tool that we use to basically destroy everybody else in 2 sword tournaments. Right? So, if I can poke him, right? If I put this forward hand out of position, which is the hand that can reach my body, and I can poke him, he cannot get to my body with this hand yet.
You don't even have to block.
Right. Right? You see that? So it's all about the positioning of that forward hand when it comes to body throw. Or again, if we can reach each other's forward hands with both of our hands, right? Then it becomes about the positioning of this hand. If I strike this hand from the outside and I have this sword in the way, I've got my sword is in the way of both of his weapons. Right? If I strike the inside hand and this hand stays in the way of this weapon and this hand stays in the way of this weapon, my stuff is in the way of both of his weapons and my hands are relatively safe. Yeah? Said this is all predicated then on the positioning of this forward hand. This back hand, he can really only do one thing. He can go to my inside wrist, right? Unless he's really reaching to come around to my outside. And if he does that, you may as well hand me his lunch right now. I want to show you guys a couple quick and easy safe openers. Okay? So that you can start, you can basically use them as kind of like, all right, well this is where I'm going to start. And then as you get really practiced with the returns that you get from this, you can expand upon it. So a safe opener I use all the time. Just that inside wrist there, right? And I'll keep my hand just like in board because that's where the danger is coming to, right? I'm gonna bring my hand over and I'm gonna cover. Right? So once he throws, whichever hand he throws with, if he throws with this hand like he did, right? I've got a real easy chop here. If he brings this hand up, right? I've got an easy chop here. I've got an easy chop here, right? Right? Okay. If I throw the outside, right? If I throw the outside, this hand's going to basically be my umbrella to cover whatever I need to cover, right? So if he throws that chop there, right? I've got a real easy return here, but I've opened this lane, so I need to bring my tip up and keep me safe from here. Wait, move after I throw? What? Yeah, right?
With my other hand that's not attacking?
All right, another one that I'll use an absolute ton, and this is probably what I've won more tournament fights in than any other shot, in 2-sword on 2-sword, is I'll come up and I'll be like, I'll stutter a stab, or I'll do like a motion to do that with their hand, and I'll go this, I'll hit them in the hand here, and I'll bring my tip down. And they will always throw with one of their two hands, and I stab the bejesus out of him. Whether he throws with that hand, right, I'll stab him. If he throws with that hand, I stab him, right, and I just cover.
I had a great time with all of you guys.
I saw myself die 100 times.
Right?
Yeah, because it's exactly what I would have done. Ha-ha!
Yes. Yep. And you're just like, boop, and their sword just hits the top of your sword, and they're like, why was that there? Why? Right?
You're supposed to pull it back and throw again.
Reset? That's cheating.
Yeah. I guess that's kind of a point that I should say. If you've noticed in all of this, when I throw a shot, my stuff stays out in the way of his things, right? I don't throw in return until I get hit.
Pink, there's so little load.
Yeah.
Everything is just forward projection. There's no talkback or anything. It's just like your talkback is getting hit, and then you just go forward from there. Like you catch the block, and then it's just all forward motion.
Yeah.
With all
I use my feet to generate the power of the swing.
Okay.
All right.
Proper body mechanics.
Force of a shot is generated from pushing off something big. Okay. You can do it with like the strength of your arm, but the strength of your arm is far weaker than the strength of my legs. Right. When you throw a shot, what you're doing, just like walking, you project yourself forward by pushing off of something big, which is the ground.
And now you are officially ready to
Like being in space and trying to do this, you wouldn't have anything in it.
Yeah, there's no power to it. It's just like when people jump and throw a shot. You're like,
I was about to become a Terminator. I was like,
right? So when I throw a shot, I'm pushing off of my back foot into my forward foot, letting my knee lead the way. That force comes into my hip, up in my shoulder, and out my arm. Right? So if you hold up your arm. Right, so if I can, from here, right, if this is exaggerated, right, it's not arm, just like Anatole said, right, it's like there's no recoil. I'm not bringing it back, I'm letting my body kind of be that recoil, right, we're just, right, so you can generate one of two ways, either you can go forward, Well, you can turn, you can push the turn, right? So I'm pushing off of my feet to create that power. Now that force creation is the same like with this, when you're throwing like a flat like I do, or when people throw a dark side. A lot of times you'll see people throw dark sides and they'll do this number, right?
You have another time.
It's such an exaggerated motion from what it is. All it is to hit that side of the body, it's just a chop. That's all it is. It's just a chop where you turn your hand like this at the end of it. Right, you're just that's it. Alright, it's not this. You're just making more work for yourself. Like, why would I move my shoulder here in order to hit you here? You know, if you're like, well, I need to fake him, well then step and hit him. Right? Right? And that force is created because you're pushing off of this foot, turning your body into this foot. Right? My arm, my elbow is not changing. I can do it opposite too. Or, right? Yeah, you can use your weight of your body a little bit, but that level change, if I don't drop, you know, this shot comes here, right? Or I have to bend over. If I drop, I don't have to bend over. Right? I'm keeping my spine over my shoulders over my waist.